I would like to thank all of you for your forgiveness since I did not show up last year at a time when I was scheduled. So I have an opportunity to do it differently this time. I think it might be helpful just to sketch in very quickly something about my own background and interests, since I think it does play a part in some of the developments in relation to the course. I was a very confused young man in the middle 40s. I graduated from college, which was accepted in medical school at the University of Chicago. Did not really have either the money or the motivation to undertake that particular curriculum, although I was still very much tempted by it. I had about 8 months in which I might earn some money, and I therefore wandered over to the University of Chicago and asked, do you have any jobs? The only job for which I seemed to be qualified, that really isn't the term, but the only job that was available had to do with something called the metallurgical laboratory of the university. I didn't know what that was, and only later recognized that that was the code name for the atomic research development program at the university. Some of you with long memories may recall that the first chain reaction in the atomic age began under the football stadium on the campus of the university when Enrico Fermi started the pile and happily was able to stop it and celebrate it with a bottle of Chianti. The reason for talking, I think, about that at this point is that there are so many startling parallels and juxtapositions which become clear to one only over the course of time. This was, of course, during the war. I was made a kind of junior administrative officer of the university because I wasn't qualified, but I was a warm body on the spot and was able to take care of a great deal of expediting of shipments of plutonium, uranium, and things of that kind. I decided not to go to medical school after I had saved up a few $100s, and I thought there was a kind of commitment to seeing this through in a different historical context where the hope was that there would be a way of perhaps facilitating the end of the Second World War, where Western civilization might be hanging in the balance and we were not sure what was happening elsewhere. I stayed with that program until August of 1945. I was there about a year and a half. And at that time, of course, we are all aware of the tragic events when the bomb was dropped. And I felt, okay, I've done whatever it was that I was supposed to do, and I will resign, which I did. Now, if I'm not going to get a MD, I guess maybe I should get a PhD. I didn't know what a PhD was. I had never really known anyone who had gone through this particular kind of struggle and travail, so it was all totally uncharted area. My family said, well, what does that do? Can you make a living with it? Or do you hang it on the wall? Or, what do you do if you get a PhD? But the extraordinary thing was that after the following month, after I resigned from this program, Carl Rogers appeared on the campus at the university to found his counseling center and to teach as one of the basic tenets of his philosophy, unconditional positive regard. And I thought, that's very interesting. Unconditional positive regard is obviously perfect love if you want to translate it rather simply. Rogers didn't want to get involved in something that might sound unpsychological. And I started working with Carl, who made me first his teaching assistant and then a couple months later his research assistant. The reason that he hired me was because I was totally unqualified. I think this is very important. It really is. At 21, I didn't know anything. I had no graduate courses, and so I told Dr. Rogers, this is the beginning of my graduate work. I don't have a master's. He didn't pay any attention at all. He said, when can you start? So I became the first member, actually, of the student body at the university to work with Carl. Everyone else had been imported from Ohio State, which had been his last appointment. So the juxtaposition of the atomic bomb and perfect love within a month struck me as rather dramatic. However, I was not burdened with religious beliefs or concerns at that time, at least not on a conscious level. I had grown up in a somewhat lukewarm WASP family, where my father or mother would say, it can't hurt you to go to church on Sunday, although I noticed that they didn't go themselves, so that there was no impetus for doing this kind of thing. The intellectual atmosphere at the university was also quite different. Chicago at that time, when Hutchins was the chancellor and Mortimer Adler was doing the great books with Hutchins and so forth, was a very different kind of atmosphere than was customarily found. Many people describe the university as a Baptist university where atheist professors taught Jewish students Thomistic philosophy. It was quite true. And if I was confused before, I did not become less confused as the result of this exposure. So somehow I went through a program and I got a PhD from Chicago in March of '49. I wasn't quite sure still what you did with it, but I thought perhaps after I have this degree, I will learn something because I really don't have time to learn anything now. I'm too busy getting this degree. And, after that, I'll, hopefully have a breather and can learn something. So the only extremely firm conviction which I held in my mind was I will never be a university professor. It's the last thing I want to be. First of all, I don't have anything to profess. And I looked around and I saw a very eminent faculty, but somehow there were little bits and pieces of information or knowledge. There was no sense of synthesis, even though this was the goal of the particular program I was in, which was called Psychology and Human Development, an attempt to try to integrate all of these different aspects of one's being. And I thought, I'm not sure that the emperor has any clothes, but I'm only a naive graduate student, so I can't challenge that, and maybe I'll find out later.